I think we're settling down a little bit. Yeah. Thanks for coming in, everyone. This is really great. We're at Film Capital here, and we're hosting this series of webinars during Cannes Film Festival. I'm really happy to do this. I personally went to Cannes every year for the past years, and it was really fun. Now this is a virtual experience, and we're obviously surfing it with you guys. We have Hatem here, Hatem Diab. Hatem is a managing partner and one of the founders of Gerber Kawasaki Wealth Management based in Santa Monica. They've been in Santa Monica really doing amazing stuff since 2010. And at their firm, they basically help out clients to set up their financial, well, basically they help their clients build their wealth, and you know, they help with their financial planning for the rest of their lives. I know that whenever they have people, it's a lifelong journey partnership. So I'm really happy to know Hatem and his firm. Here, you know, Hatem and his partners daily and on a weekly basis, they deliver news about you know, what's happening in the world and how the markets are shifting, what's the movement in the current market, global market right now. And that's why we wanted to open up with this. And obviously everyone knows right now we're going through a very serious pandemic. We call this webinar post-pandemic, but obviously we're still writing it, and it's still, you know, now in the US, we're facing the second wave, but I feel like the first phase is out. So we called it post-pandemic, but obviously the psychology, how we feel after that first scare is coming into play. So now, obviously, I wanted to ask Hatem a little bit about himself, and I let him introduce himself a little, but then I'll start with my questions. Hatem, it's all you.
Thank you, Ali, for having me, and thank you for tuning in. It's funny, actually, my family lives in Cannes. I live in Santa Monica, so it's kind of weird to be doing this webinar when I would love to be in Cannes right now. But yeah, these are weird times. My firm is called Gerber Kawasaki. We are a boutique Santa Monica-based wealth management and investment advisory firm. We've been around for about 10 years and one of the founding partners, and we manage about $1.2 billion for people. And what we do is really, we help build wealth. We help advise clients on strategies on how to maximize their assets, but also we do a lot of investment management. So we look into companies, we look at trends, and strategically basically put assets to work. So we'll buy anything from individual stocks to mutual funds to ETFs and different strategies to help clients take advantage of what's going on. But yeah, I have a good relationship with Ali. We've got to know each other. I love what AI Capital is doing and all the innovation that's happening there. So when he asked me to be part of this, I was like, absolutely. My firm being in Santa Monica, we have a lot of there's Pascal.
Yes. I think Pascal has his audio.
Hey,
I think I'm on.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. We had some technical.
You know, all it took was turning the computer on and off again.
Welcome to webinars during pandemics, huh?
Exactly. I mean, and I've been doing these Zoom calls nonstop during this entire pandemic. I mean, it's just been crazy. But I got a new computer, and it's you know, so just dealing with the glitches. So apologize about the tardiness.
That's fine, Pascal. You missed my introduction of Hatem, and Hatem was just told.
No, I actually heard Hatem's introduction. I on my cell phone.
Perfect. Let me introduce Pascal then, and you know, and now everyone is up to speed in that sense. Guys, Pascal is an entertainment executive for 24 years. I mean, we're in the same city with them.
Actually, Ali, thank you for making me younger. I actually been doing this. If I hadn't missed this con, this would have been my 35th Cannes Film Festival in a row.
But yeah, this is it. This is it right now. This is you were at Cannes Film Festival.
Yep.
We're doing it here. Well, guys, Pascal is very, very experienced in licensing, production, and marketing. He's produced so many films, and he's obviously not stopping anytime soon. Now he's producing 3 films that I know. If there's anything else, obviously he'll let us know. But he just announced Icarus Factor. I know that he's working on Afterward. It's a movie with Aaron Eckhart. I know that film. I'm really excited for it. There's also another film called Cursed. I don't know when it's coming out. We'll ask about all that, but it's with Mickey Rourke and Lindsay Lohan as well. And it's Pascal is in that sense in the middle of the entertainment industry. I would say he's leading the sector in LA, and I'm so happy to have him here. Pascal, I'll let you to introduce yourself a little bit, and then I'll start with my boring questions.
Sure. Well, I've been, as I said, I've been doing this for a long, long time and have worked at different companies, have had my own company. I'm back to having my own company again, and which is great. But I've been involved in all different aspects of film financing and licensing, film and television properties. One of the big accomplishments that we've had is we actually got a movie shot during COVID.
Oh, wow.
And we shot it down in Australia. It's a remake of Stephen King's Children of the Corn. And ironically enough, when I started off in this business in 1985 at New World Pictures, Stephen King's Children of the Corn was one of the first movies that I sold. And years later, last summer, the guy who'd been heading production up at New World at the time when I was working there, Don Borchers, had the rights to do another remake. And he called me and said, listen, what do you think about this? And I thought, listen, I think it's a great idea. I mean, everybody loves Stephen King and those movies always make money. And we set it up with two other producers, a guy named John Baldecchi and Lucas Foster. And both John and Lucas had worked with Kurt Wimmer, who's well known for, the writer of Texas Chainsaw 3D Massacre and a bunch of movies, very accomplished writer. And he's directed a few movies that one of which Lucas produced and another one which John produced. And we decided to grow the corn in January in the Southern Hemisphere. That was the only place we could go to. So we grew the corn, and we had to get the corn shot. So we had plants that were 6.5 feet tall, completely mature. And you can imagine the amount of money that we'd spent in pre-production when COVID happened. So it was pretty stressful times. Luckily, we had gotten our insurance several months before, and that's what saved us, because there was no exclusion for COVID. And we did not have a bond on it, which can sometimes be a little scary, but it also meant that we were in control and would not have to shut down.
And the insurance paid with no problems? There's no pushback?
Nope. What we did is we laid down a plan and we presented it to the government of New South Wales, which is the state where Sydney is. And it was basically a closed set. No one could come in or no one could come in, no one could go out. The crew was in separate quarters from the cast. The cast had flown in. Literally, the girls got in the Thursday, and the Friday, they shut the country down. So the girls got in just in time to do 2 weeks of quarantine. And then Easter weekend, we started shooting.
Wow.
And so the idea was, let's get the corn shot. So our goal, first of all, was just to shoot the corn. And that was going to take 2 weeks. So all the scenes that transpired in the cornfield had to be shot. And then, we were convinced that at some point we were going to get shut down. So there was obviously the need for speed was essential here. And we just kept shooting and kept shooting. And the more we were shooting and things were working out, yes, there've been some calls to the tabloids that, people weren't social distancing, but all in all, with the measures that we took, with the doctor and the nurse on set, checking everybody every day, people having to show up to sign affidavits that they'd not been in contact with anybody with any types of ailments or fever or whatever that might, mean that they were sick. 5 weeks later, we wrapped.
Oh,
Perfect.
So everybody came back to LA 10 days ago. Lucas, the director, Kurt Wimmer, and our two lead actresses. The rest of the cast we cast in Australia, and some Americans. Obviously, we couldn't. We had to recast the roles down in Australia because there was no travel. But I think it's going to be a case study.
yeah.
And I think that what was interesting about this exercise, because we got shut down. Ali mentioned another movie that I'm producing called Afterward with Aaron Eckhart and Terrence Howard. Because we had not yet gotten insurance, we were just getting our insurance in pre-production at the beginning of March. The bond company shut us down. Now, fortunately, we hadn't spent any money yet. I mean, some money for pre-production, but nothing substantial. But the bond company basically called us and told us that they were shutting down every single one of their productions. And we were lucky that we hadn't spent any money yet. And because they were literally we're talking, tens of millions of dollars of production that the bond company just said, we can't take the chance of COVID. We're shutting everything down. So no movies, obviously no movies were shot during this time except for Children of the Corn that I know of. But the measures that we used for that shoot, we're actually going to use on Afterwards, because our intention is to shoot that movie at the end of August, beginning of September. And we're still dealing with the challenge of insurance. But once we figure that out, which means there'll be a bunch of calls, today and this week to see if we can finally figure out a way. We're brainstorming, and there's a team of us. We're brainstorming on how to pull this off. But the challenge really boils down to the insurance. I mean, we're going to spend a little bit more money with the COVID measures that we're going to implement, because it's pretty. I mean, it's substantial. I mean, you can't have catering. Meals have to be prepared. Again, you have to practice social distancing. Again, I don't know how that's going to happen when you have a love scene, for example, or somebody's got to kiss somebody. I don't know how we're going to pull that off.
Are those guidelines, are those your own guidelines, or are those kind of what the guidelines that you're following by the state or by the?
Well, we're waiting right now for guidelines from SAG, for example,
Right.
Because obviously one of the things that we were thinking initially was, let's get the actor, like for example, for us, we're shooting up in Humboldt County, which has only had 5 cases.
Mm-hmm.
So we're pretty confident that we're going to be in a fairly isolated spot, and if we do the measures that we plan on doing, that everybody should be okay. But what happens if one of the actors if our main actor gets sick? That's where it's a real problem, because then we have to stop production for 2 weeks. So one of the discussions that we're having is to put 2 weeks in the contingency in your budget, to put 2 weeks worth of production in there to cover you, because if you're not shooting, you're still paying people. So somebody's got to pay for that. Before that, it was the bond. The bond company would step in. If there was a problem like that, the bond would step in and fund and guarantee completion. Well, nobody's taking that chance now. And so this is the challenge that we're coming up against. So going back to what I was saying with the actors themselves, what we were thinking is, have them sign waivers. Now, if you're a member of the guild, if you're running SAG, you're like, you don't want your actors just waiving their rights away. But again, that was something that we thought, well, if the actor says, hey, if he gets sick, then it's going to be on him. So you can imagine right now the panic with the agents and the attorneys, and now the guilds. We're still waiting for the guidelines from SAG. Will they let their clients work even? With this situation. So this is real challenging times. I mean, this is like the Wild Wild West, guys. I mean, we've never been faced with a situation like this, and the ramifications of it have just been tremendous, because when everything first started going down, I had no idea how it would affect and how it would affect us. And luckily, we were able to pull it off on Children of the Corn. But as I was saying, Hatem, even though they don't have, we don't have any set guidelines, there's a lot of stuff. Before we were shut down here on Afterward, my line producer, who shot a movie, I think just before Katrina, he's dealt with a whole bunch of situations. He actually came up with a plan. I actually sent that plan down to Lucas in Australia, just to say, listen, this is what we were going to be doing on this movie. We should think about implementing these changes on our production down in Australia. And he used that as a blueprint to get it out. So, I mean, I'm happy to share that with folks and, you know, obviously got to give my line producer, Brad Southwick, credit for being the first one to think about that, because we had already put measures in place anticipating, you know, that there was going to be a problem. We just didn't know it was going to be this huge of a problem.
And I was going to say, a lot of people are listening, and I think this is inspiring for filmmakers, because obviously, you know, here we were all waiting to hear from how this is going to affect the bond companies. How are they going to respond? And you basically are giving a very first person experience and how you dealt with it, because you did actually complete one. And that is a blueprint. And I think that there's a lot to learn from that. And, you know, someone actually, by the way, someone just asked, did you sell the corn? So
we burned it. We burned some of it. We had to bulldoze some of it. There's a pretty massive scene where it was expensive scene too. I remember having the conversation. You know, Australia opens up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, LA time. It's 9 a.m. the next day in Australia. So I'd be on the phone, you know, from 3 to 9 or 3 to 10, whatever, you know, crazy stuff was going on. And there's a very expensive scene where we literally use bulldozers to make a mass, which becomes a grave for the parents. So the kids, sorry, it's a spoiler alert, but you know, the story's well known, guys. The kids kill the parents.
Uh-oh.
So there is a scene where we bury the corn, but I tell you, it was a challenge. It was interesting because, you know, everybody's like, why the hell are you going down to Australia? You know, because we're an American movie. We got no tax. We got some location credits, but we didn't get the big windfall that you normally get when you make an Australian movie down there. We just went down there because it was summertime and we could grow corn.
Yeah, easy. And it ended up being a whole different story with the COVID. And I kind of want to, you know, take a moment here and you know, and talk about how this uncertainty is affecting, you know, everyone, and how it's affecting the markets as well, because obviously the film industry is being affected. And I'm glad, Pascal, you shared the information on how you dealt with it. And I didn't necessarily hear this story from you. I'm inspired personally to hear that, you know, you created a framework, a blueprint, at least to, you know, create the initial brainstorming on how to deal with this. And I'm so glad you're in the forefront of it. I'm not surprised though, I'm sure you are. Here I want to also, you know, kind of talk about how the global markets are at the moment. And Hatem here is someone that constantly analyzes the market and constantly comments on it as well. And I listen to him weekly. Here we are, and you know, in the midst of all uncertainty, and I think the more coming with the second wave. What do we expect to see in the next 3-4 months or the rest of the year? How, you know, how we should be prepared? I'm personally very curious, and I'm sure everyone is too, Hatem.
I think Pascal just really summarized what's happening across every industry out there. You know, it's everyone is scrambling, everyone is trying to figure out how it's going to impact in their business. You know, we as a firm invest in technology, invest in, you know, a lot of innovation and so forth. And it seems like those companies are doing quite well, and they're really helping the markets, because right now a lot of companies have to just be digitally savvy. They have to transform. They have to be kind of more thinking about how to fast adapt to these new challenges that exist, right? The economy itself, we're probably in the worst economy I've seen in my life, which I'm 40 years old, and it's, you know, and I think it's global, right? We've never had shut down the economy for 3 months. We don't even know what the impact of that just yet. And I think we haven't seen the worst of it just yet, right? Because you're going to see a lot of businesses go under. Central banks across the globe are printing a bunch of money to help really, you know, kind of with liquidity, help businesses stay afloat, so we don't see those bankruptcies. But eventually, you know, if you're running a retail store or a restaurant or really any business that or even a Disney park, right? You have seen a tremendous disruption to your business, and we just don't know what's the long-term impact of that. So even though equity markets or stock markets, which where we deal in, have done okay this year, and especially if you own technology, you've done good this year. I think there is a lot of pain to come over the next 3 to 6 months. And you see companies like us, which we have a sizable amount of money invested, about 1.2 billion. We've seen us raising a lot of cash, being a little bit more defensive really in our positioning, because it's tough to see an economy that's going to be down 6% and unemployment at 22%, and the markets kind of continue to be strong. Now, if you kind of take that to your business, or to some of the people here who are in the entertainment business, I'm really worried about the entertainment business. We deal with a lot of people. We're in Santa Monica. That's kind of our bread and butter. I'm worried about, theaters not opening, Now, if you're Netflix and you're able to kind of digitally distribute movies, you're doing well. You have a ton of money on your balance sheet. But if you're small, small company trying to make movies right now, it's going to be a tough time the next 3 to 6 months, because as Pascal said, what's the cost of all these COVID, kind of restrictions,
Yeah, exactly. And Pascal said something really nice there, and I want to kind of highlight that, embedding that incorporating that 2 weeks budget into the 2 weeks of, basically insurance, your own insurance budget into the actual budget will be, is one of the things that I noted mentally.
I don't think you'd be able to get any insurance going forward. I mean, what insurance company would want to do that?
Well, it's interesting. Again, we are literally in the thick of this. I mean,
Right.
it's really interesting that we're having this conversation about this, because I mean, this is what I'm dealing with this on a daily basis. And I mean, when I spoke about this 2-week contingency being added to the contingency, because normally the budgets already have a contingency built in there. The bond company
Sure.
demands it and requires it. To have this additional money put in there, he will remain nameless, but one of the guys who runs a bond company here in Los Angeles, and I had a discussion with him on this last week, and he said to me, he goes, well, that's great, but it's going to hurt my business, because technically when you're putting money in there like that with that much contingency, you're kind of auto bonding yourself.
Sure.
In many ways. So there's going to be, and that's another thing that we've come up with as well, that we've been debating. It's scary and very dangerous, but to say, listen, will we take that risk and say that we will cover the overage? So I mean, there's, again, we're literally dealing with, I mean, this is exactly, which is why it's interesting we're having this discussion, because this is what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, and Pascal, what do you think of other producers in LA? And usually other people, how are they dealing with, do you know how the industry is responding? Because Hatem pointed out something really important. He said, I'm worried about entertainment industry. I think that's important. I've been brainstorming on it. I've talked to people about how they think the model is shifting. What do you think? New things? How do you think the industry will adapt to this? Because we have.
Well, we will adapt. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, there's no other choice. And I mean, listen, I'm 59 years old. I'm not doing anything else at this point in my life. This is what I know how to do. I'm going to continue doing this till the day I die. And we know there was a very, very interesting article. If folks haven't checked it out, the headline was "The Death and Rebirth of Hollywood." And the author actually did a follow-up article on it as well. It's very, very interesting.
I will share with this people. If you can send it to me after this conversation, I'll send it everyone as an email.
Sure, because it really taught he basically said that the power in Hollywood has shifted away from the agents and talent managers, and basically the studios also have had a tremendous impact. Oh yeah, I think somebody posting it there. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, somebody just posted it in the Vanessa did. Thank you for doing that, Vanessa. But I found that article fascinating because it talks about the shifting of power in Hollywood. And what they were saying is that the people actually who are going to come out of this situation better than before are actually the independent producers. And which is very encouraging. Listen, when you're stuck in your house in lockdown, making countless Zoom calls, wondering when the hell, when the light's going to come at the end of the tunnel is going to come through, and you read an article like that, it was actually very encouraging, and it actually made a lot of sense. Because as an independent producer, the challenges of putting together these movies are always tremendous, and they've gotten even more difficult with the new medium. The bottom line for me is this: streaming has now become even more dominant. I mean, we had no choice; nobody could go to the movie theaters, and viewership not just viewership, but the amount of people that are the subscriber base has you can imagine has gone through the roof. So even if the movie theaters close down, which they won't, I mean, they're going to come back. I feel there's still going to be a need for movie theaters, and people will want to go to see movies in the movie theater. But they're going to be much more selective, and where the demand is going to be on the streaming platforms, who are going to need
content.
Yeah.
So that for me, Hatem, where I think the industry is going to go is like, we're going to figure out ways to make movies. And the thing is, I hope, I feel that, this is at least my opinion, that, and again, if you speak with friends, people are constantly now asking, they've actually exhausted all new programming on Netflix or on Hulu, or everybody's asking, hey, what are you viewing? What are you watching? And I just finished this. What's up? There is going to be a need for product. So if you have the wherewithal to finance your film,
yeah, I was just about to ask you that.
There you go, Ali. We write those checks. Because my feeling is that there's going to be more of a demand ever for finished product. I mean, I'm not selling Children of the Corn. I just just put it together and picked up executive producer credit and fee. But I can tell you one thing, by December, January, when it's a completed movie, it's going to sell for a whole bunch of money because there's going to be not much out there. And I mean, one of the reasons we're trying to push, and I have a call with my investors on Wednesday with regards to Afterward, the Aaron Eckhart movie. And one of the things that I'm stressing to them is that, if we get this picture shot in September, we'll have it ready first quarter 2020. And that's a great time to come with a finished movie, because 6 months, hopefully we're going to, 6 months later, we're going to be opening movie, the majority of the movie theaters hopefully will be functioning again. We're going to have to make certain assumptions, but if that doesn't happen, we're still going to have several streaming platforms that will be in need of product. So we feel that, having completed movies is going to be a very valuable commodity.
So can I add something to that? Full disclosure, we have a large position in Netflix as a company, and we also had a larger position at Disney that we reduced a little bit. And in the grand scheme of thing, I think streaming has won, right? For the last 2 or 3 years, people were like, oh, streaming is cool, streaming is cool. Now we know that's really the only way to get movies out at scale, at least, right? And obviously the distribution is there and the technology is there to make it fast. But I think, to your point, and I'm not in the movie business, but as an investor, I think having platforms like Netflix and Amazon allows movie makers like yourself to have a little bit more artistic freedom, right? The movies that could not be done before because of the studio cast or the studio system now can be done, it can be sold. And maybe they don't need to have millions and millions of viewers or millions of target audiences. They still can be profitable. So I think that's a good thing for the movie business per se. But you have to have that plan. They have to have that distribution plan within your business plan when you're making the movie, because you're not going to be able to do it on the theaters.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
And
I agree with you, Hatem. I absolutely agree with you.
and going off of what just Hatem said, Pascal, what would you, if you were raising now, what would you tell your investors? I think what you said about, the shortage of content and the amount of, the ability to sell it in the future is an amazing point. What else would you share with them in terms of, basically explaining them the business plan now?
Well, the thing is that as much as there's going to be a demand, the returns are limited in terms of, when you have a movie that works theatrically, it generates, a lot of revenues, from the box office. Then it has, you have your ancillaries, which continue to generate money. Whereas, a movie, let's say you make it for, I don't know, $15 million, and you go out and it plays theatrically, and it could generate hundreds of millions of dollars, could generate tens of millions of dollars. When you go to sell that same film to a Netflix, they have certain formulas that they adhere to, which is, they'll give you a certain percentage more than the film cost. So, and that's the only money you'll see. So, you try to get the most money you can, but generally they may say, okay, you made it for 15, we'll pay you 20.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to take care of all your profit participants, from that 20, and of course, we got to take care of our investors. Absolutely, get them paid, but everybody, everybody's going to have to take a smaller piece of a smaller pie.
Yeah.
The irony of this COVID thing is Netflix became cash flow positive because they could not spend money on production the last 3 months. So it's kind of interesting.
It's
now to finish, to be able to actually deliver and deliver the content. I think, if I was talking to any filmmaker, I think, now that the bond companies are kind of taking a step back, I think if the filmmaker is talking to an investor saying that they're actually able to deliver the film in a way that they can actually go out there and sell, that's so important. And I think you completing your film, Pascal, is a big hope for people, and also a blueprint, as you mentioned.
Yeah, because the thing is that, again, just look. We're all resilient people. We go through disasters. We have over the in history. If you look at there's crazy times, and yeah, we're living in a crazy time. But I think that through perseverance and looking at things in a rational and smart way, we can accomplish all sorts of things. So this is not insurmountable. It's just right now it's just taking a lot of effort to figure it out, but we will figure this out. There's no doubt about it. People need entertainment. It's like I said, even with me, I've been binging like crazy, when there was nothing else to do. So I know from my personal point of view, and as I said, it's something that we're all we all know from experience that we want to watch something new on TV. So that desire, it means there's a need in the marketplace. We just have to figure out how to deliver.
Yeah, agreed. Guys, we're coming kind of close to our time in a way that we're completing, but the conversation is going really well. I think people are sending the questions. Maybe we can just do a little bit of Q&A before we wrap up, if it's good for you guys, because everyone's asking questions. So if anyone have questions, this is the time to kind of post it here, and I will direct them to Hatem and Pascal. I have a couple here, so already noted, because people also have been posting stuff. So one of the questions was this: what can a new VOD service offer independent film directors with regards to the deals? He added this: a new VOD service cannot naturally compete with Netflix. However, that service, the service might not have the money to pay as much as Netflix. But how can a new service compete? Basically, that was a question from Mark. Do you think there's an area for anyone to come in and compete with the?
I could talk a little bit about Quibi, right? The disaster that is, which is basically they wanted to be a new format. They went out there and raised $1.5 billion, right? And they got a bunch of, supposedly smart executives to run it. But ultimately, if people don't like the content, it's not going to work, right? So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you go. It's really about how good the content is, and if people love it, Netflix, as much as people talk about Netflix overpaying and spending too much money, they do have a lot of great content, and they get a lot of really great producers and spend money to do that. So I think at the end of the day, just get some great producers, get some great talent, and create some good content, because we have a ton of it available, and we only have a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
I mean, Hatem, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think if you look at a very similar, I think one of the best examples would be if you look at HBO as an example. I mean, they got so many extra subscribers just due to Game of Thrones, for example.
Sure.
One show, can turn things around. I mean, they were already well established. It wasn't like they got saved by it, but it drove subscribers, and that's the difference with these platforms, is that they are not, they're subscriber based. So that means, everybody's writing the check out, whether it's 10 or 14 or $15, whatever it is a month. And that money's going. So it's not like, you're going to you're depending on people going to the box office.
Right.
Are they going to come? Are they not? They're showing up. And I did want to make a comment about, when we were talking about the streaming a little earlier, Ali, that you had during COVID, you had a couple of movies that went straight to streamers, and caused a lot of brouhaha with people like AMC, who were really furious that for example, with Universal with Trolls is the best example, where it performed so well that, it's shown that there is actually a possibility now of making expensive movies and then going strictly to streamers and bypassing theatrical, and making money.
Yeah.
And I'll make a prediction. I don't know if it's right. I think either Netflix or Disney will have to buy one of these chains, one of the theater chains. That's the only way those things will work, right? If Netflix buys it and no longer, it's not, the economics change a little bit, that's how they can survive. And by the way, they'll buy them in bankruptcy. They're not going to buy them outright. So just the model has to change, as Pascal said. Just got to adapt,
Yeah. I agree, and I'm going to move on to the next questions because we have 3 more and 1 more coming.
Sure.
We can answer all of them before we.
I'll try to be fast. Sorry if I'm.
People ask, how do we get in touch with Hatem? So we're going to put that as an email after. That's easy. I answered that already. And to Pascal, someone asked, what additional requirements would you have from service providers and independent studios to attract you to film there in the context of the pandemic?
Well, it's ultimately, in terms of where we're going to film. I mean, for example, we shoot nothing in Los Angeles. Yeah, I've got 5 movies set up. I've got 5 more films that we're going to be shooting over the next 6 months. 2 are being shot in Italy, in Puglia, down in the south. 1 is going to be shot in either Massachusetts and Ohio, with about a week shooting in Italy as well. And then the other one, we're getting budgets for New Jersey. We're getting a budget for Ohio. That's the Mickey Rourke one, the cursed film. So ultimately it boils down to dollars and cents. What incentives, what free money is available to incentivize us to go to that location.
Got it.
That simple.
Got it. Do you have anything to add, or should I move on to the next one?
Next one.
The next one is, will art house cinema find its space on streaming platforms? Who wants to take that?
I'll take that. I mean, I do actually. I think that is what is going to save art house cinema. To be perfectly honest, I think that the economics on these more sophisticated movies have diminished tremendously. You know, we can't even get, for example, I can't even sell an art house movie in Germany, for example, because it's all about, you know, my buyers being able to sell on to the TV broadcasters, and they just don't want them. So and again, the power of those movies, it's where we're getting all our new filmmakers from.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out ways to keep those people making movies, because, you know, I mean, I can tell you, I remember when Bryan Singer had his first movie at Sundance, and a buddy of mine saw it and thought it was brilliant. And when he had the script, he sent it to him, and it became Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
And, you know, now Bryan Singer's, you know, well, Bryan Singer's in a lot of trouble right now, but, you know, he still, you know, made some pretty big blockbuster films. And, but he came from the art house world. So, you know, I think it's important for us to encourage these people to continue making movies, and there is going to be an audience. And I think it's up to, and hopefully, you know, the streamers will figure out a way to make the economics work. But the economics should work, because they have, you know, again, going back to their model, I mean, it's a subscriber base. So, you know, I think that, you know, I'm hoping that they all, you know, realize that. And, you know, I've met Ted Salantros, and, you know, think he's somebody who loves cinema. He's the chairman of Netflix.
Yeah.
And he loves cinema, and he loves movies. And I would see, you know, as long as we have people like that are running these streaming companies, we will have it. You know, these filmmakers will have an outlet, and we need them to have an outlet.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to that. I mean, Ted Sander is probably one of the most important people in Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at data, right, Netflix success is really hinged upon the fact that they know a movie or a series is watched by 20,000 people, or 100,000, or 5 million people in Ecuador, or France, or whatever place is.
They don't share that information with us, unfortunately.
Of course they don't. They don't want to share with you, but they will come in, and they come to someone like Ryan Murphy or whoever that they have, and they know that his show or his movie is doing well in this part of the world, and they will pay for it. And there is power in that, right? So if art house movies there's people looking to watch these, and there is an audience, I think money will go towards them. And I think that's much better than the old model where you got an executive at NBC or whatever telling you, oh yeah, okay, we want to make this and not make that, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And I also agree with the fact that, you know, Pascal said, you know, as soon as these people run these corporations who are passionate about filmmaking, I think art house films are always open and good to go. And someone asked something so related to that, saying, what advices would you give to independent producers to reach pre-sales or sales directly to big streamers? Is there a way to do that?
That's the big challenge. I mean, you know, this is the thing. I mean, I've seen the birth of video and the death of video. I've seen the birth of DVD and the death of DVD. You know, it's interesting, you know, all these different trends that have happened over the years. One of the things that really helped fuel independent film and financing has been the ability to make pre-sales. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the pre-sale market now is just so darn difficult. And you know, unless you have something that's, you know, has like big cast, big director, you know, kind of a must-have, people will wait to see the finished product. And unfortunately, the streamers pretty much, yeah, things may change now because of the lack of product, but pre-COVID, they could just sit and wait till the people brought them the finished movies. You know, and yes, there's certain producers that have the relationships that you know, they're getting stuff greenlit by Netflix, and maybe they will do that more often. But going back to what Hatem was saying, is that, you know, as long as it fits within their algorithm, they'll pre-buy it. So so to answer the question, if your project doesn't check off those boxes, you're not going to be able to pre-sell it. And failing that, you're going to have to go talk to people like Ali and Hatem to see if you can get somebody who believes in it and will roll the dice and allow you to make allow you to get to finance the movie so that you can get it to completion and then sell it.
Sure. I think that question was answered really well to Mark, who asked it. So there's another one. from Tiago. This is the second one we're answering from Tiago, but he asked really good questions. He says, can other forms of short format like Quibi ever be successful and profitable? Why do you think it failed, and what characteristics should be there for those kind of platforms to survive?
Hatem, you want to go at it, or you want me to?
I'll give you my non-expert opinion on this. Personally, I just don't like to watch things on my phone per se. Like if I want to watch something that is, kind of entertaining, I'd rather watch in a big format. I think that's Quibi. Another reason I think, as much as I respect Katzenberg and whoever he hired, I think to have innovation in entertainment, you have to have someone who's young and who hasn't been tainted by the industry. I don't think there's ever been a successful entertainment tech company that's been started by a person in their 60s. And this has nothing to do with me not liking older people. It's just that, there is kind of a way to look at the world when you're in the 20s and 30s that is different. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why Quibi hasn't worked, and there's egos and all the things that that come with it.
Yeah.
So please don't hate me for saying that, but that's my non-expert opinion on that.
Well, so I have an opinion on this, and it's interesting because we've been looking very, very diligently at Quibi and its lack of performance, because I'm involved with a group that's going to launch a streaming platform, not to compete with Netflix. It's a very different type of. It's similar and it's different. But one of the things that we've been doing, we looked at Quibi. They've spent $500 million on production, which is a staggering amount. And again, Hatem, I look back at what you just said regarding and our analysis was like, well, Katzenberg comes from the studio background. It's inevitable that he would just go the studio way. So we've done an analysis to look at what we would line up in terms of a programming slate for our platform. And one of the things that we were, I mean, the numbers are incredible. Quibi was spending on an average $114,000 per minute to produce the amount of programming. We're trying to do the same, not the exact same, but similar stuff. Talk shows mostly. That's really where the brunt of this is going to go on our platform. But we still want to do some short format stuff as well. So I wanted to answer that question for you, Ali, in 2 seconds. But basically, our cost when we did our analysis, and the guy who's going to be running production for us is very, very, very well versed in this world. Is going to be so $114,000 a minute for Quibi. We're going to be doing it for $5,800 or $6,000 a minute. Very similar stuff. Huge difference in economics. And that's why, and the way that we look at it, there's going to be stuff that's not going to work, and we'll do just like what Netflix does and do the analysis and figure out what worked, what doesn't work. When you don't have that much money invested, you can pull that off and then replace it with something else. Exactly. And so yes, we will have some short format stuff that we've been looking at. I mean, this stuff is just so confidential. I can't discuss everything, but it's a foreign a show that was broadcast in Europe on one of the big European broadcasters that's just hysterically funny, and the writer wants to adapt it into English, and it's hysterical, and it's each episode is 3 to 5 minutes, and every time I watch one of these episodes I die of laughter. It's actually it's from France. Amazing. And so the way we look at it is that there is a need for that stuff, and Hatem, you may not like watching stuff on your phone, but let me tell you something, kids will take that phone and they're waiting, for the sub.
Yeah.
They're going to be on there checking out. And you got a little episode that's 3 minutes long, boom, 5 minutes long, boom.
I mean, look at TikTok, right? 700 million in revenue this year. It's insane.
Yeah. So that's that, Ali, I do think there's going to be a need for that content. It just has to be the right content.
So here's a question for you, Pascal. I don't know if we're going over time, but quick question on that subject. Why would I start a new platform when I can use some of the established platforms, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, to kind of create content and put it out there and maybe even do a revenue share?
You know what? We'll have, I mean,
Amazing question.
here's the thing. There's, and you know, I've been talking all about, you know, the plethora of platforms that are out there right now, you know, HBO Max. I mean, there's a whole new slew of them out there, which is going to be great for us filmmakers, because there's going to be buyers out there. Now, to enter into that, you need to be unique. You need to be different. You know, you can't compete with Netflix.
Correct.
You know, that would be insane. You know, it's like, you know, they've got billions of dollars at their disposal, and they're already established, and they're the big kahuna in the marketplace. So if you're going to do a streaming platform, and the one that, you know, ours is an AVOD, is AVOD. So I mean, you know, there's going to be publicity on it, and if you don't want to watch the ads, then subscribe. You know, and that's how we're going to pull it off. But again, we're not competing with Netflix. I don't want to, because it's still proprietary and we're still not launched, and we're literally doing all this stuff as we speak. We're actually just signing a lease right now in New York City at the Pier, which is going to be the studio. We're going to be, you know, doing a lot of this production of the talk shows. But for us, you know, our idea is to have something that's different, and it's going to have its own unique content, which is what's going to drive people to it. Again, going back to your remark about, you know, it's about the shows and it's about the programming, and you get your audience, and you don't need, the great thing, the economics on these things is that you don't need 10 million subscribers. You know, it's crazy. I mean, you can, you know, 500,000 people, you know, which on a worldwide basis is nothing, you know, it makes your, you know, if you do your you know, again, going back to my economics compared to Quibi's economics, on our economics, we can make this work.
Yeah, agreed.
But it's all startup, so it's all, you know, fingers crossed, guys. Let's hope we can.
Good luck, and let's talk, man.
Really excited.
Love to hear more.
Yeah. And let's get one last question, and then the other ones I'll try to address them via email, because we're actually running out of time. As much as I love to keep going, we have next one coming up as well, and I'm not moderating that, so I have to log out. Pascal, Patty says we want to see the plan that Brad Southwick came out with. There are people and a couple of people.
You email me, and I will get that out to you.
Yeah, Pascal shared his email, guys, in the chat, so this is answered. Well, let's talk about this one and finish off, because we actually talked about so many things, and I think this is really important, and this is a very short answer. Mark says, what kind of data VOD platforms want to see from you in terms of your project? Is it aggregate viewing habits? What's the most important data points that you should basically present?
I mean, one of the things that continually comes up in conversations production wise is cast. And when, you know, everybody else says, well, if you cast this kid in it, Netflix will buy it. And why? Because, you know, like, you know, perfect example, like, you know, the kid who plays Archie in Riverdale. You know, it was like, oh, put Archie in there because Netflix will buy it, because it's one of the stars that they know, and they've got their audience is already, you know, geared around that. Yeah. That's kind of the only criteria, because as I was saying earlier to Hatem, we don't have access to Netflix's data. You know, it's proprietary. They keep it. They don't share it with anybody, so they know. But then there's certain things that we also know, you know, just because I deal with their acquisitions people all the time. I know they're not crazy about period. They're not crazy about period pieces. They'll look at them once they're completed, but it's not something that they would pre-buy. You know, their criteria is, you know, again, it's based on algorithms, it's based on viewership, and so it's kind of a black hole in that, you know, you just kind of have to try and present and just see, you know, get the reaction. There's no tried and true formula, unfortunately, to get these movies, you know, greenlit. You just have to get your package together and then, you know, get it to the right people to get a feedback, whether it's yes or no.
Packaging is key then. And so let's wrap up slowly, because we're actually running out of time, but I want to say thank you to everyone, because this was, I hope this was empowering to everyone who listened, and we talked about so many things. We talked about how people are reacting during pandemic, how film industry is adapting, how Pascal shot a film during COVID, how he actually did it, how, you know, and how we should be prepared for the next things in the industry, and how the independent filmmakers and producers can take advantage from it. I'm just gonna ask your final comments to both of you guys. What would you share in a couple of sentences, and then we'll say bye to everyone to connect later on soon. Hatem, let's start with you, and then
I always like to end with a positive note, right? I think you know, despite how crazy everything is right now, in times like this, right? Some of the best companies, some of the best projects in history have been created in times of crises. So you got a lot of people creating some really cool stuff. Maybe Film Capital would be part of the solution here. But this, you know, entertainment business is one of the things that we all need in our life, not just to entertain us, but also to get us through tough times, right? So, you know, going through these social upheavals and so forth, we look for our creators, our artists to kind of, you know, set the tone. And I think there is some positive that's going to come from this, and I look forward to that.
Thank you. Thank you. Pascal?
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all, Ali, for having me, you know, this morning. I mean, I think for me, it's always interesting to participate in these kinds of things, because, you know, you get to share ideas and bounce stuff off. And even just for me, even though I'm like in the thick of it, you know, it helps me, it helps put things into perspective for me. So that's always helpful. And I want to, you know, say, as Hatem said, you know, I think, you know, during these times of crisis, incredible things happen. If you look at historically with the film business, you know, during the Depression, which was, you know, one of the worst economic times in history in this country, you know, maybe this one might become as bad, if not worse, but the film business flourished during that time. It was, you know, people needed entertainment. And I think in these tough times, particularly when, you know, we're not traveling, you know, we're not going out as much. I mean, I've gone out to a few restaurants since these last couple of days. It's a total different experience. I was at Soho House, by the way, Ali, Friday and Saturday night. Yeah, it's different, man. And it closes at 10 o'clock at night, and you know, it's a whole different scene. So, you know, these are, you know, we're not going out as much, so people are going to need entertainment, you know. And again, that's been consistent with what I've been talking about, you know, this morning with everybody. So I do want to end also on a positive note, you know, in that I think that, you know, it's time to, you know, tighten our belts, you know, look around and, you know, really figure out a path of least resistance. You know, I think if we can weather this storm, there's going to be, you know, not a windfall, but, you know, there's definitely going to be a lot of benefit for everybody.
Yes, I really appreciate both of you ending on a positive note. I think we should definitely always look in that direction. I also believe there is light at the end of this tunnel. Again, everyone who attended, thank you so much for coming. And Hatem and Pascal, I'm so happy to have you. We'll have you guys again.
Good luck, guys.
We're gonna have more of these, and this is gonna be re-uploaded on our website. So if you missed a couple points, come back in a week or so. It'll be available. And Hatem and Pascal, I'm sure they are also. They will be with us again soon. So thank you for the questions. For the ones that we left unanswered, I'm sorry, we have to go, but I will try to address them via email one by one. Again, thank you guys.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Bye, guys.